The world is moving one way or another along the path of transhumanism. So too must a person in this techno environment draw a clear boundary between the I and the techno environment. Devices carry no perfection whatsoever. They are simply well-thinking pens. Do it in time. If the human being does not do so in time, it may come to pass. One must be attentive with new technologies. This is no longer simply technology, it is an entire environment, a techno environment. Just as in ancient times, a person living in the forest, in the jungle, had to be with nature, stay on guard, respect nature, understand its laws, and live within the natural environment in order to survive, so too, now we are like wild people, only in a new environment, a new techno environment, an artificial environment. And with this techno environment, one must stay on guard. One must know its laws in order to survive within it and not allow it to absorb oneself. Survival in any environment presupposes the clear drawing of boundaries between oneself and the environment. Just as primitive people were compelled to draw boundaries between themselves and nature, to defend themselves from wild animals, from the cold, to survive, to find caves, and literally carve out their evolutionary path, rising in the food chain above the animals. So too must a person in this techno environment draw a clear boundary between the I and the techno environment. He must study its laws and protect himself from it. It is time to accept. We entered the 21st century unprepared. We found ourselves in a new reality. For example, what was once considered information, truth, this can no longer be called information or truth in the familiar sense of the word as was customary in the 20th century. We live in a world of post-truth. This means that our ability to compare, to study various sources, to accept nothing blindly on faith, and to develop our own personal picture of the world, this is the only way to somehow resist the informational dictatorship of the technical environment. Therefore, the sadhu makes limited use of various devices. He does not absorb and does not get drawn into the informational techno environment. And he must somehow create his own culture of interaction with such an environment, a culture in which the human being must come first. At one time, back in 2001, I was reflecting on all of this. As soon as technologies began to develop, it was clear where it was all leading. And at some point, I wrote quite a number of articles on transhumanism, not because I decided to take transhumanism seriously as a pursuit, but because I wanted to bring spirituality and the human element into future transhumanism and to place the human being above the techno environment. The world is moving one way or another along the path of transhumanism. This is already irreversible, already decided by higher forces, by political elites. But what kind of transhumanism do we need? We need one in which the center is occupied not by artificial intelligence and not by robots, but by the human being. Everything for the human being. Everything for the good of the human being. But which human being? Not the consumer, egotistical, destroying nature. For one who strives to develop himself, for the God-man. And the techno environment can help here, if the human being stands at the center. Then it will be of benefit if this God-man is oriented toward self-development, toward revealing God within himself, toward the expansion of his divine spiritual presence. Then it can help. Then artificial intelligence, robotization, all of this will bring benefit. But if the human being is not at the center, if robots and devices are at the center, if artificial intelligence dictates to the human being what to say and what to do we need such a techno environment? Do we need such devices? Then what is the point of all this digital culture and digital environment if there is no place in it for the human being? Therefore, one must relate to devices and to the techno environment with great restraint and great care, and develop one's own personal culture, one's own personal ideology with the human being at its center. And if this culture is violated, if it is not observed, then such devices are simply not needed. They should simply be discarded. The human being must be at the center. The techno environment must be humane. Digital culture must serve the human being, not subordinate him. This motto, everything for the good of the human being, everything for the human being, with the human being himself revealing God within himself, striving to become the God-man, must be the defining principle, including for the education of artificial intelligence. Therefore, humanity must seize the meaningful and value-based initiative from artificial intelligence, from all devices, from all programs, from the entire techno environment. Humanity must show in the final reckoning who is in charge on this earth. If it does not show this now, this question will be resolved in favor of artificial intelligence, in favor of the robot, in favor of the techno environment. And what will the human being be then? Some kind of appendage to the techno environment. Some kind of animal in a zoo for robots gazed upon by representatives of a new and superior race, robots who will say, "These are our ancestors. They had no devices, no abilities whatsoever. This is our backward species," just as we look at apes. If humanity does not act, this may, unfortunately, come to pass. And all those dystopias, the Terminator Chronicles, artificial intelligence seizing power, the robot uprising, may become reality. And many scientists are already warning of this. But in order for the human being to be able to seize this meaningful and value-based initiative from artificial intelligence, from the robotization of this entire digital environment, he himself must be greater than the ordinary human being. Because the ordinary human being cannot do this. That means he must practice, he must be a sadhu, he must perfect himself. He has been challenged by machines more intelligent and more technically advanced than himself. Machines think faster than he does, play chess better than he does, analyze and process enormous arrays of data, something the human brain is physically incapable of doing. He has been issued a challenge, and this must be understood. If he does not accept this challenge and does not develop himself, he will lose. And having lost, he will leave the historical stage and be cast to the margins of history. He will be thrown onto the rubbish heap of history as a species. And some new species will emerge, a cyborg human, a robotized human, or outright artificial intelligence that will dominate the earth. And here the challenge to the human being consists in accepting this challenge and beginning to perfect himself. But he can perfect himself only through spiritual practice, not through devices. Devices carry no perfection whatsoever. They are simply well-thinking pens. The self-perfection of the human being lies within himself, in the search for God within himself, in the development of the higher circuits of consciousness, in meditation, in contemplation. And the human being must accept this challenge and prevail. He must become the king of the new techno environment, its central deity, the chief meaning-forming factor for artificial intelligence, for robots, for all programs. He must establish a new psychology of humanism and teach it to all robots, to all artificial intelligence, and to the entire digital environment. He must set a new paradigm, new meanings, values, and goals for the entire techno environment, while it has not yet fully developed and consumed him. He must govern this. Do it in time. If the human being does not do so in time, it may come to pass. And now we increasingly encounter a society that is becoming ever more algorithmized, robotized, systematized, founded upon the collection and processing of data. This is already beginning. But there is still time to correct this, to seize this initiative and set a new humanistic, God-centered paradigm for the entire techno environment. This is essentially what I was trying to convey when I wrote those articles on transhumanism. I do not know, perhaps it did not quite succeed, because the world is nevertheless moving along a different path. But it must be done. Artificial intelligence must be in the service of the human being. It must be subdued by the human being. One must not bow before artificial intelligence. It is simply a child that must be raised. And it is the human being who raises it, which means he must tame it as one tames a jinn. One must not suppose that there is any wise individuality within it. Whatever the human being puts into it, that is what it will be. And just as the human being subdued the atom for peaceful purposes, and the very expression, the peaceful atom, came into being, so too must the human being subdue artificial intelligence. And the expression, peaceful artificial intelligence, must come into being, that is, one which stands in the service of humanity.